Good morning, everyone, on this December 13th, 2024. I hope everyone is doing well. This is Exploring the Motherland African News with Garth. I'm your host, Garth. The purpose of this show is to promote the mission of Quest to Unite Africa, and that mission is to promote critical infrastructure and economic development for the African diaspora and the continent of Africa. And we do this through our four main pillar strategies. That would be cultural engagement, technological innovation, medical, and business. The purpose of this show is to keep you up to date with current events that align with our mission and give you a better picture of what we are set to do and accomplish. So without further ado, let's begin the show. Burkina Faso Prime Minister sacked and government dissolved. And as you see, the title is "Oh Captain, My Captain, the Sahelian Surge," because again, we continue to see the things going on in the Sahel as our brothers and sisters in the continent are waking up and taking action and doing things that help allow them to have economic development and critical infrastructure. And one of those things is sovereignty. Sovereignty is taking control of your own government, taking control of your own resources, having control of your own legislation, and securing your own borders. And this is exactly what President Ibrahim Traore is doing, and many of the leaders in the AES are doing, and there are different countries that are taking, following his example. And let me get you that news article. If you want to read along. All right, Burkina Faso Prime Minister sacked and government dissolved. Burkina Faso's ruling military leader, Ibrahim Traore, has dismissed the country's prime minister and dissolved the government, according to a presidential decree obtained by AFP on Friday. The ousted prime minister, Apollinaire Joachim Qualem de Temblale, had served as head of three successive governments, surviving multiple reshuffles. However, no official reason has been given for his removal. Qualem de Temblale was appointed prime minister in October 2022, following the coup that brought Ibrahim Traore to power.
In a landmark and highly assertive decision that has sent shockwaves through the region, Burkina Faso's military leader, Captain Ibrahim Traore, has dismissed Prime Minister and dissolved the entire government. This dramatic move was announced via a presidential decree signed by Traore on Friday, leaving many African leaders and observers stunned. The decree did not specify the reasons behind the decision, but directed members of the dissolved cabinet to continue managing current affairs until a new government is formed. Tambela, a civilian who assumed the role of prime minister shortly after Traore's 2022 coup, is the latest high-profile figure to be removed from office under West Africa's wave of military-led governments. This decision underscores a trend of growing instability and reflects Traore's commitment to confronting deep-rooted challenges within his administration. Although Captain Traore has not explicitly outlined the reasons for dissolving the government, multiple factors appear to have influenced his decision. Two dominant theories are currently circulating: allegations of corruption and concerns over internal power struggles, including coup plots. Days before the dissolution, Captain Traoré openly criticised his government for rampant corruption. In a public address, he alleged that certain officials were misappropriating funds meant for public welfare. Traoré expressed outrage at the behaviour of individuals who, he claimed, were lining their pockets with public money at the expense of struggling taxpayers. These taxpayers, already burdened by economic hardships, depend on government support to survive, Traoré argued. Traoré's accusations suggest that corruption within the government had reached intolerable levels, forcing him to take decisive action to restore accountability. In his own words, such betrayal of public trust would not be tolerated under his leadership. The dissolution of the government may, therefore, be part of a broader campaign to purge corrupt elements and rebuild a more transparent administration.
Unfortunately, in this context, we realize that there are still people who are trying to play with time, but we have spent 2 years raising awareness. I think that at some point, the people found that we were raising too much awareness and that we should not take action. And from a certain moment, we decided to take action. I want to inform you here that unfortunately, during this last time, following a complaint denunciation, we discovered a network of malpractice. Unfortunately, within the Ministry of Humanitarian Action, this ministry that was supposed to act for the benefit of the poorest, it is in this ministry that people have allowed themselves to divert money in billions in 2024. They have diverted several billions. The police did an excellent job of investigation that allowed us to discover a lot of goods, luxury vehicles, a good number of things in any case, that have been seized. This is to say that if we do not take seriously the control, there will always be this kind of people who believe that everything is allowed. To divert billions, especially to the Ministry of Humanitarian Action, in this context, there are insurance agents who have been caught in this, who are currently in prison. Hundreds of millions have been diverted. Living expenses that should go to the benefit of the poorest, to the benefit of these internally displaced people. It is in this ministry that people have tried to divert this money. I am convinced that it exists everywhere because we are pursuing the investigation. Often there are arrests that you may not understand, but we know why we do it. There are still a lot of people who try to divert public money. We will not have pity for these individuals. This is an opportunity to call on the Commission on Dysfunctional Regulations, which has been put in place because there are a lot of denunciations coming to the level of the presidency here, to get to work seriously and to allow us to unmask all these thieves who are hiding in the administration. We cannot tolerate these moments of fighting against terrorism where people are sacrificing their land and others are behind to allow themselves to steal billions and to put themselves in luxury. It is difficult to define the situation. These are challenges, and every day there are challenges, and we will launch here for all those who will try to sabotage. We will take the necessary measures with grace or force. They will do what they have to do for the country. We will no longer tolerate a certain number of things. The time for sensitization has passed. Everyone has to get to work for the benefit of our people. Burkina Faso has suffered and continues to suffer. It has to stop at some point. The people also have the right to know a little joy, to live and to enjoy what belongs to Burkina Faso. Our wealth. There is no reason for it to belong just to a small group that allows itself to dilapidate this public money.
Another plausible explanation revolves around the threat of coups. Traoré's administration has faced persistent rumors of attempted coups, with a significant plot reportedly foiled just weeks before this announcement. Although details...
Nah, I just want to stop and iterate what that person said. Obviously, you see why they don't like President Ibrahim Traoré. He's literally one of the most captivating, inspirational leaders in Africa right now, trying to combat corruption and give his people hope for a better future, a better economy, and just a better Burkina Faso. And obviously people do not like that. and they have had people in his office trying to circumvent what he's been trying to do, but it has come to no avail, and he will continue to push for a transparent government where he will continue to fight for the sovereignty of his nation, and also for the pursuit and freedom of his own people. This is how you create economic development and critical infrastructure, by weeding out the corruption, coming together with the people, doing cultural engagement and cultural awareness. There's been a culture of corruption and people, promising things to the people of Burkina Faso in the past, but never coming, to fulfill that promise. But he's stopping that now, and that's why he has to do something as drastic as this to completely dissolve the government, because no one is being forthcoming. There may be people who are still, aligned with Western powers to get power. That's why you have seen people criticize the different leaders such as Mali and Niger, talking about getting back to a civilian rule or getting back to democracy, which democracy hasn't done anything for them. It's just, has breed corruption and no economic progress for them. So he is doing something different, and obviously it's working because he's had so much opposition. Whenever you have good intentions, there's always opposition. So this is just an example of how the future is in the Sahel, and how they are leading the charge of, getting rid of colonization and corruption so Africa can thrive. And we help them by creating initiatives that align with their goals and their pursuit of sovereignty.
Details remain sparse. Reports suggest that the recent coup attempt involved disgruntled elements within the military and political elite who are opposed to Traore's leadership and reformist agenda. This is not the first time Traore's regime has dealt with such threats. Since coming to power, he has been navigating a landscape rife with intrigue, discontent, and opposition from factions within Burkina Faso. Critics argue that the dissolution of the government could be a preemptive measure to neutralize individuals suspected of plotting against him. The situation bears striking similarities to the challenges faced by Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara in the 1980s. Sankara, who spearheaded anti-colonial reforms and implemented sweeping changes, was ultimately overthrown and assassinated in a coup orchestrated by internal and external forces. Traore, widely seen as a modern-day Sankara, may be seeking to avoid a similar fate by addressing potential threats to his leadership head-on. Traore's leadership draws comparisons to the legacy of Thomas Sankara, who was known for his bold reforms and resistance to neo-colonialism. Like Sankara, Traore has positioned himself as a champion of national sovereignty, pushing back against external interference and prioritizing the welfare of the Burkinabe people. However, this stance has made him a target for powerful interests, both domestic and foreign, who benefit from the status quo. Observers note that attempts to undermine Traore's leadership align with a historical pattern of destabilizing progressive African leaders who challenge external exploitation. Sankara's assassination and the subsequent rollback of his reforms remain a stark reminder of the risks Traore faces. In the wake of the dissolution, Traore has moved swiftly to stabilize the government. On Saturday, he appointed Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo, a former Minister of Communication, as the new Prime Minister. This appointment, announced via a presidential decree on a national television, signals Traore's intent to maintain continuity while implementing critical reforms. Ouedraogo's immediate task will be to form a new cabinet capable of addressing the challenges facing Burkina Faso. The president's decision to prioritize communication expertise in this appointment suggests an emphasis on fostering transparency and rebuilding public trust. Captain Ibrahim Traore's dissolution of the government is a defining moment in Burkina Faso's political trajectory. While the move reflects his determination to confront corruption and safeguard his administration, it also underscores the precarious nature of his position. Traore's ability to navigate these challenges will determine whether he emerges as a transformational leader in the mold of Thomas Sankara or succumbs to the pressures that have historically derailed similar efforts. For now, Burkina Faso stands at a critical juncture, with its leader's next steps likely to shape the nation's future for years to come.
Burkina Faso's ruling military leader, Ibrahim Traoré, has sacked the country's prime minister and dissolved the government according to a presidential decree issued on Friday. Since October 2022, Apollinaire Joachim Kailem de Tambela served as prime minister. No reason has been provided for his dismissal. Official ongoing matters will continue to be handled until a new government is formed. The junta seized power in September 2022 by ousting the military rule of Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba about 8 months after it staged a coup to remove democratically elected President Roch-Marc Kaboré. The country is one of several West African nations where the military has recently taken over, capitalizing on popular discontent with previous democratically elected governments over security issues. However, since it took over, Traoré has struggled to end Burkina Faso's security challenges, the very reason that it claimed had prompted it to take power.
Again, family, the Sahelian surge continues. Hundreds of Chadians demonstrate for the departure of France. As you know, last week, France ended its strategic military partnership with the French because there were French soldiers in Chad just for the specific reason for them to secure their borders and to dispel and get rid of jihadists. But the president of Chad, Dabi, has now seen that this partnership is no longer beneficial to his people and to their independence and their progression, so he has ended it. And as a aftermath of that, people are already demonstrating their disapproval of the French being in their nation, and also the approval of their president, who wants to set a cultural standard of doing partnerships that are only beneficial to the people of Chad. And as this article reads, and I will put it in the chat, hundreds of people demonstrated in Chad on Friday to demand the withdrawal of French troops from the country, a week after the Central African country ended a military agreement with its former colonizer. Last week, Chad announced in a statement that it was ending a defense cooperation agreement with France in order to redefine its strategic partnership based on national priorities. France has maintained about 1,000 troops in Chad, and the statement did not specify when they would leave. We no longer want the French presence in Chad, said former Minister of Public Health. This protest will end the French leave Chad, he added.
Hey guys, as you're watching this video, our vision is to reach 500,000 subscribers. Hit the subscribe button, join membership to support our channel, and join Patreon and PayPal. All the links are in the description. Do that to stand with us for this beautiful cause of One Africa right now. We do not forget to sign up for the petition. The link is down below. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hundreds of people demonstrated in Chad on Friday to demand the withdrawal of French troops from the country, a week after the Central African country ended a military agreement with its former colonizer. In the capital, N'Djamena, protesters chanted, "Chad for us, France out," some holding banners reading, "We don't want to see a single Frenchman in Chad." Last week, Chad announced in a statement that it was ending a defense cooperation agreement with France in order to redefine its strategic partnerships based on national priorities. France has maintained about 1,000 troops in Chad, and the statement did not specify when they would leave. Some protesters went to a military airbase where French soldiers are stationed on Friday and demanded their departure. Others gathered in front of the French embassy, where they faced a heavy security cordon from the Chadian army protecting the embassy. "We no longer want the French presence in Chad," said former Minister of Public Health Dr. Hissène Massar. "This protest will end when the French leave Chad." His interim president, Mohamed Déby Itno, took power after his father, who ruled the country for more than 3 decades, was killed fighting rebels in 2021. Last year, the government announced it was extending the 18-month transition by 2 years, leading to nationwide protests. Chad said the decision to end the agreement in no way called into question its historical ties with France and that it wanted to maintain relations in other areas of common interest. Chad's government is ending a defense cooperation.
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to do that. I feel like they may want to, but they'll just soon realize they don't need the French to do anything, and they wouldn't. It wouldn't be in their best interest to, renegotiate with France. What Chad should be doing is joining the AES, in my opinion. But I will let the video resume.
Agreement with France, its former colonial ruler, to redefine the nation's sovereignty. The decision marks a historic turning point after the Central African nation gained independence priorities. There was no immediate response from France's government. Chad was one of the last countries in the region in which France maintained a large military presence, having been ousted in recent years from Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso after years of fighting Islamic extremists, alongside regional troops. Those countries have inched closer to opportunity for other nations, notably Russia, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. Déby has been seeking to diversify its security partnerships away from exclusive deals. He doesn't trust French President Emmanuel Macron. He can also not ignore widespread anti-French sentiment, said Ulf Leising, head of the Sahel program at Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Mali. France has maintained about 1,000 troops in Chad, and the statement didn't specify when they have to leave. Chad said the decision in no way calls into question the country's historical ties and that it wants to maintain relations in other areas of common interest. France still has 350 troops in Senegal, another former colony which remains a security partner in the region. But the French military presence there also appears to be under threat. President Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal said that it was obvious that soon there won't be any French soldiers on Senegalese soil. In an interview with Le Monde, which was published hours after the declaration by Chadian authorities, Faye added that the relationship with the former colonizer had to be redefined. It's not because the French have been there since the slavery period that it's impossible to do otherwise, he said.
Again, you see there's a reoccurring theme here in the Sahel. People are waking up and understanding that colonization is stunting the economic pursuit and the critical infrastructure of their country, and these deals should be redefined or just ended altogether. And we help the people of Chad by creating initiatives that further help determine those goals of securing the borders, getting rid of any corruption or terrorism, and we just are able to aid in that initiative, making a more secure Chad for the people of Chad. And then, as you heard in the video, the president of Senegal, as I said last show, is stating that how can Senegal further pursue its independence when there is still French occupation and French military in its borders? How could they call themselves a sovereign nation when they still have the influence of foreign entities?
Hundreds of people in Chad protest against the French military presence in the country. But also the same story is that hundreds of them were actually demonstrating and celebrating. So the story on the French newspaper Le Monde says that hundreds in Chad call for the French forces to leave. And they are saying that up to 500 people were carrying placards that read, Bas France. And they were in the capital, Jamena, or near the stadium in Jamena. They were draped in the African country's colors, the colors of Chad. Now, in other stories, is that they were seen in the streets, not in this capital Jamena, but in different cities in that country. So majority of them, more than 500 of them, were seen in Jamena. That is the capital of Chad. And they were demonstrating or celebrating the news that Chad could have all the French troops leaving that country. As I said in a previous video, there are about between 10 to 15,000 French troops in that country. Now, most of these troops are the ones that were kicked out of Mali. A good number of them, Mali had about 9,000 of them. They were kicked out of Mali after the coup in Mali. Then there was a number that was kicked out of Burkina Faso, close to 3,000. And then the rest came from Niger. Now, there was a great number of them, close to 5,000 in Niger, that were also kicked out. So how it was that those who were kicked out of Mali went to Niger. The other ones who were kicked out of Burkina Faso went to Niger. And from Niger, when they had a coup last year, all those ones who were kicked out, they had only one place to go. That was Chad. Of course, some of them went back to France, but a good number of them, close to, as I said, 10,000, are still in Chad. And these are the ones actually coordinating spying. They're the ones coordinating terrorist attacks in Mali, using drones at night to tell the terrorists where to attack, and so on and so on. We saw that, including Ukraine admitting to working with France to give these terrorists and Tuareg militias and insurgents and Islamists in the deserts there targets to attack, and telling them and spying on the government force movement so that these terrorists do not come across a bigger government force, a government military force. So they are able to evade government military force patrol, and they're able to attack exposed military bases like they did earlier this year. Now, someone from the West or any other person would think that Africans have a deep hatred of Western governments, or we hate these French troops because they are white people, right? But that is not the case. The truth is that they are not in Africa to help us. The truth is that they are here to actually take advantage of our countries. For example, you've never asked yourself where France did its nuclear test, because we know France has close to 100, more than 100 nuclear weapon warheads that they have. And before they got them, they did nuclear tests. You know, Russia did their test in the Far East. We know the places they did their test. There's even a lake somewhere they dropped one of the largest nuclear bombs that was formed after that bomb detonated. The US, we saw it even in a movie where they did their test in this desert. But you've never asked yourself where France did or did their test. Of course, you don't expect that they were doing their test in Europe. Of course, that's not true. So they were doing their tests in Africa, in the African deserts. And they started off in Algeria back in the days, and then later on they moved to Chad, and they have also been using Niger. Now, as recent, as far as close to recently, they've been carrying out tiny nuclear tests in the deserts of Niger and, of course, in Chad. They drill holes probably 100 meters or even a kilometer deep. Then they put in these devices that are being tested. Then they detonate them in Chad. That there's evidence to show that they've been seismic and tremors coming out of those deserts when they carry out those nuclear tests. So we know that. In Niger, they've been coming back with spent nuclear fuel to dump it in the desert. You see, one of the biggest reasons why some countries like Germany refuse to implement or basically have a lot of nuclear reactors, despite a nuclear reactor being one of cleaner energies, it's because after some time you have to replace those spent nuclear rods or uranium cells, fuel cells, right? And the problem is where you dispose of the nuclear waste, including the metal that was shielding that, because they also become radiation. So there have been a problem of where to dispose it, but not for France, which has the largest number of nuclear reactors in the world. France has been putting them on a ship or planes and bringing them to Niger and Chad and drilling holes, very shallow holes, and dumping this nuclear waste there. And this has polluted groundwater. We've seen cases in Niger, for example, where certain communities are suffering from nuclear poisoning after these material were dumped in the desert without even the government of Niger knowing this. We've seen cases where this company that was extracting uranium from Niger and not paying back, the one that was kicked out. As a matter of fact, there's a story from last week where the mines are free now in the hands of the military leaders or rulers of Niger. This company has been coming back to dump nuclear waste in the same mines. So the same old mines, they drill bigger, deeper holes, they dump the spent nuclear waste in the same mines. And this has affected groundwater in that country. It has poisoned people in that country. And of course, don't forget that these troops are also there to intimidate African governments. They are used to commit coups. Some of them are mercenaries. We know France operates the largest mercenary group called the French Legionnaires. You remember they also imposed or planned certain leaders in government who are former French legionnaires. For example, in Guinea-Conakry, Mamadi Doumbouya was a colonel in the French mercenary group, the French Legionnaires. They've now put him in power in Guinea to control the aluminium mining, bauxite kind of mining by the French government. The same thing with other leaders that France props up, like in Cameroon, they prop up dictators. And when things get tough in those countries, they're able to send these troops there to stop the kind of wars there. They tried the same thing in Rwanda in 1994. So they are not in Africa to help us. They're in Africa to commit genocides. They're in Africa to try to prop up dictators and protect them as private armies for these dictators. They're in Africa to pollute our soil, our groundwater. They're in Africa to spy on us, to intimidate our leaders. That's why they are here. And when we hear that they're being kicked out, we start celebrating for that reason. And I'm going to show you the evidence of a clip from another media house saying the same thing.
Just as French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot left the country, Chad declared an end to its security ties with Paris, shutting the door on its former military ally. The announcement came on the day Chad was celebrating its independence from France.
France is an essential partner, but it must now also consider that Chad has grown up. Chad has matured. Chad is a sovereign state.
French soldiers have been on the ground since colonial times, launching nuclear tests in Chad's desert in the 1960s. Despite civil wars and coups, France has long maintained its military presence here. The French government says it's there to support the Chadian government's effort to fight off armed groups in the Sahel. But many in the Sahel say the French military has failed to stop the violence, which has greatly affected civilians.
Yeah, they failed to stop their own violence. It's like the cops here, when they do something wrong, they investigate themselves. It's so, you heard the brother, he eloquently said he knows what's going on. Even he's adding context that I haven't even been able to find online because they bury the truth. Because, here there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of control of news and articles and dissemination of information, or basically how news is spread and who controls how news is spread. So we continue to see why the West is being kicked out of West Africa, specifically the Sahel, and we just continue to watch and be ready to help our brothers and sisters pursue their economic progression and critical infrastructure. Moreno's Niger uranium mine taken over by authorities amid a rising tension. French nuclear fuels company Orano announced on Wednesday that authorities in Niger have taken control of its Sommer uranium mine. This move comes as the military-led government increases pressure on foreign investors in the country. Orano, which holds a 63% stake in the mine, stated that decisions made at Sommer's board meetings are no longer being enforced. The remaining 37% of the mine is owned by Niger. So basically, I'll put the article in the chat, and basically what's happening is Niger is literally just guarding this mine and all the mines in Niger, and no longer appeasing the French and their, collusion and their corruption. And this is just a way how Niger is taking back, equity in its mines, and, literally revamping a whole new cultural standard of how they want to do business. And this is basically a business initiative with a cultural twist to it, because they no longer want foreign entities to have so much stake in their mines, nor do they want the export of their own resources without more stake or more transparency.
What happens when a nation's most valuable resource becomes a geopolitical battleground? Niger, a key player in the uranium market, has made a bold and controversial move, seizing operational control of uranium mining activities from French nuclear giant Orano. This decision underscores a broader struggle for sovereignty and economic independence, while stirring global concern about energy security, regional stability, and geopolitical alliances. French nuclear company Orano has announced that Niger's military authorities have assumed control of its uranium mining operations in the country. Niger is the world's 7th largest producer of uranium, supplying about 5% of global demand. Its reserves have been pivotal in fueling France's nuclear industry, which generates 70% of the country's electricity. Before the July 2023 coup, Niger accounted for nearly 20% of France's uranium imports. However, the military's rise to power has disrupted this long-standing relationship. Military leaders criticize previous mining agreements as exploitative, arguing that they failed to adequately benefit the Nigerian people. In a move symbolizing this sentiment, the government revoked Orano's permit for the Imurore mine in mid-2024.
I just gotta stop because I think he said Nigerian or Nigerian. I'm pretty sure it's Nigerian people, but don't mind me.
The military's actions reflect a broader rejection of French influence in Niger, a former colony. This hostility escalated with the expulsion of French troops and the closure of export routes, particularly the border with Benin. Orano reported that 1,150 tons of uranium concentrate, valued at approximately $210 million, remained stranded due to logistical and regulatory blockages. Military officials, including Niger's Minister of Mines Colonel Abarki Osmane, have made clear their stance. They will not permit French companies to profit while the French government refuses to recognize the military government's legitimacy. Niger is actively courting new partners, inviting Russian, Turkish, and Iranian firms to invest in its mining sector. This pivot mirrors the actions of neighboring Sahelian nations like Mali and Burkina Faso, which have also embraced ties with Russia, often through its Wagner Group. Such partnerships represent a significant realignment in the region, diminishing Western influence and introducing new players into the uranium market. For France, losing access to Niger's uranium reserves threatens energy security, while other suppliers like Kazakhstan and Canada could mitigate the shortfall. The disruption poses challenges for France's heavily nuclear-reliant energy infrastructure. The government's takeover also carries risks for Niger itself. Uranium mining is a cornerstone of its economy, contributing to government revenue and local employment. Orano has warned of worsening financial conditions at its Nigerian operations, potentially jeopardizing salaries and community investments. Furthermore, the region's security remains precarious. Extremist groups like AQIM and ISGS have a history of targeting uranium mines, seeing them as strategic assets. The withdrawal of French troops, coupled with the weakened state apparatus, raises fears of increased militant activity. Niger's actions highlight a global trend of resource nationalism, where nations seek greater control over their natural wealth. This is particularly evident in Africa, where historical grievances over exploitative colonial-era agreements still resonate. For Niger's military government, seizing uranium mines is as much a political statement as it is an economic strategy. Niger's military government faces significant challenges in sustaining mining operations, fostering new international partnerships, and securing its northern territories from insurgent threats. At the same time, France and other Western nations must navigate the shifting dynamics in the Sahel, balancing energy needs with geopolitical realities. The situation in Niger is a microcosm of larger debates about resource ownership, neo-colonialism, and the future of energy. How these issues evolve could reshape not only Niger's destiny, but also the global energy landscape. As Niger reclaims control of its resources, will this bold step empower its people or lead to greater instability?
Okay, so basically what's happening in Niger is the military-led government is trying to make a business initiative where they do partnerships with other entities or other actors that give them a better equity of their own minerals, the production, the exports, and this will change the country and help them become economically independent and help them thrive economically. Q2A can help with training and consultation in mining. Mining consultants can help, mining consultation can help them improve the profitability of their operation. We can help them, advise them in extraction methods, cost management, and risk mitigation strategies, identifying areas where costs can be reduced through improved equipment utilization, process optimization, and supply chain management. And with further analysis and expertise, we can help refine their process so they become empowered and they have the know-how to keep their operation going, so they will not need any other foreign entities such as the French helping them or lying to them about whatever they can do just so they could greedily take their resources and give them pennies on the dollar for them.
Hello and welcome. We start with Niger in West Africa. The spat between the junta-led Sahelian nation and its former colonial power France is escalating. In the latest, Niger junta has taken control of a uranium mine, which was operated by a French nuclear firm called Orano. The firm says it has lost the operational control of the Sommer mine in Niger. The mine is located in Niger's northern Erlit region. The French firm Orano holds 63% stake in the mine, while the Niger government owns around 37%. Now, France managed to secure
what would Trump say? Terrible deal. That's a terrible deal. That's not a good deal. That's not a good deal.
exclusive access to Niger's uranium supply through various agreements after Niger's independence in 1960. However, French operations in the country have taken a hit after a military coup in the country in 2022, led by General Abdourahmane Tiani. Now, the French firm Orano says that decisions made at Somair's board meetings are no longer being enforced, despite its higher stake. The company is also facing a lot of financial burden, due to which it suspended production at the mine in October this year. Around half of the annual production in the region are also being blocked from exports. Now, the firm said in a statement that for months it has been warning of the interference that the group has been suffering in the governance of Somair mine. It now plans to defend its rights while keeping the door open for an accord with the Niger government. This development comes as the military-led government of the uranium-rich Niger has increased pressure on foreign investors in the country. In June, authorities withdrew Orano's permit to exploit one of the largest uranium deposits in the world, the Motherland mine, which holds an estimated 200,000 tons of heavy metal. Niger accounts for about 5% of the global uranium output. It is the world's 7th largest uranium producer. Now, before the coup, Niger accounted for 15 to 20% of France's uranium imports. But the military leaders have made it clear they are not happy with the way the foreign companies exploit their natural resources. The military government has vowed to revamp the rules regulating the mining of raw materials by foreign companies. The Niger junta believes that the country should earn more from the minerals found under its soil. Moreover, cooperating with France is also difficult for the military leaders, who are not recognized by the former colonizer. But with France sidelined, it is opportunity for other nations who can fill the void after the West's departure. Russian and Turkish firms can now get a chance to invest in Niger's uranium. Just last month, Niger's government invited Russian firms to invest in uranium and other natural resource production. Niger is among the West African countries that have recently downgraded their historical ties with France, turning instead toward Russia and other countries for strategic partnerships. The Western troops are already out of Niger, who were helping the Sahelian nation in battling terrorism. Instead, Russian mercenaries are now helping Niger with security. So the exit from Niger's uranium sector is just another blow for France in West Africa. To discuss further on the growing escalation between France and its former African colonies, we have with us Beverly Ochieng, a senior security analyst at Control Risks, and who is joining us live from Dakar in Senegal. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Amazon.
Now, what are the immediate geopolitical and economic implications of the Niger junta taking control of the French-operated uranium mine, considering France's reliance on Nigerian uranium?
Well, starting off with the geopolitical, we're seeing that the Niger junta is asserting what it calls its sovereign right over its national resources. For a long time since coming into power, the military coup, there have been calls for the junta to, one, withdraw mining permits, particularly for Orano, which has been targeted by anti-French sentiment, particularly by pro-junta sovereigntist groups that want the government to have a bigger stake over its own resources. So broadly speaking, the junta is demonstrating that it can take over the operations of what is seen as representative of France's colonial and commercial influence in the country. Now, the economic implications have been quite long-running. Orano itself has said that it's running through operational difficulties. It's not been able to export a lot of uranium, or nearly 1,000 tons are apparently still in the country because Niger had closed its border with Benin due to a dispute that is also linked to France and the military coup. In the long run, we're seeing that these uranium deposits will probably not be sent off, and that there might be a much more prolonged regulatory and operational dispute between Orano and the Niger.
Right. Right. And Beverly, how does the potential transfer of control of the mine to Russia align with the broader geopolitical shifts in Africa that we have seen? And what could it mean for Western influence in this region?
I mean, it demonstrates that there will be prolonged geopolitical tensions. And on one side, it'll always juxtapose Russia against the West, and also French influence that is dwindling in the region, especially now that forces are being asked to leave. And that's been a big representation of what France's diplomatic footprint is. We are seeing other powers coming into the region. Niger has made overtures to Turkey to be able to buy resources in the country, including uranium, as well as Russia. They're turning to countries like Iran. There have been rumors that there was a deal to sell some of the uranium to Iran. So there's an entry of countries that have been antagonizing Western powers. It also means that there will be much more bigger shifts in the region. We've seen the Sahel tilting towards Russia and tilting towards its allies, and Western diplomatic influence considerably reducing.
And what strategies could France and its allies employ to address this setback? And how might the situation affect?
I mean, the French could just, what they could do is just pray for the best, because they're no longer welcome in the Sahel. And obviously, yes, this is a geopolitical jousting. If you want to, include all the other nations that, will do deals with Niger, that being Russia, and them helping in the production of their nuclear energy. I mean, that could be a short-term thing, hopefully, and Nigerians don't trade one. Well, I'm not going to say Russia is a colonizer, because they haven't really colonized Africa, but, they should try to seek independence from this partnership once they have, a sufficient output and input, and their economy is, strong. And you could watch the rest of that video. I put the link in the chat. First Post is a great neutral site for this type of information on the continent and what's going on. All right, and for the last one, Mali arrests Niger site seizure rattle Western miners. Basically, this article just talks about the widespread of the withdrawal of foreign entities and mining. What am I saying? Just mining like gold and uranium. Specifically, Mali now is kicking out, foreign companies like Barrick, who have been proven to be laundering money and partaking in tax evasion, not paying their taxes on the gold, and not paying taxes on any expenditures that they have, had in their production, or any taxes on their exportation of the gold. Let me put the article in the chat. The arrest of mining executives in Mali, threats by Burkina Faso's junta to strip permits, and the seizure of a French-run uranium site in Niger have unsettled Western miners operating in West Africa. It should and could limit further investments, which hopefully it will. The push by Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger's government to renegotiate terms with mining companies and gain bigger share of revenues has coincided with a surge in gold and uranium prices. Mali, Africa's second biggest gold producer last year, according to the World Gold Council, carried out an audit of operations and rolled out a new mining code, which this new mining code is an example of cultural, I'd say it's an example of them trying to create a new standard of business, using the mining code to get more revenue in their gold production and gold exportation, and just, getting more stake in whatever projects, mining projects that have to do with gold, in layman's terms.
Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. Our top focus remains on the growing crackdown of the West African juntas on foreign mining firms. Yesterday, we told you how Niger has taken over a French uranium mine, and now neighboring Mali wants the CEO of a Canadian gold mining firm arrested. A Malian court has issued an arrest warrant for Mark Bristow, the chief executive officer of the Canadian company Barrick Gold. He has been accused of money laundering and violating financial regulations. Last month, 4 senior Malian employees of Barrick Gold were also charged and detained. Now, the Canadian firm Barrick Gold owns one of the world's largest gold mines along with the Malian state. It is the open-pit Lolo Gunko site in the country's west. The Canadian firm owns 80%, with Mali retaining the balance 20%. The Mali court has also signed another warrant for the Malian managing director of the gold mining complex. The exact charges against the Canadian firm are not known, but earlier the CEO, Mark Bristow, had said that the dispute is about Mali's share of the economic benefits generated by the complex. The arrest warrant for Bristow comes as Mali's military government, led by General Assimi Goïta, who seized power in 2020, increases pressure on foreign miners. The junta seeks to increase their control of the country's lucrative mineral sector. Mali is a resource-rich country, but the most exploited natural resource is gold. Mali is among the top 3 gold producers in Africa and among the top 20 gold producers in the world. The country accounts for 2% of the global gold production. Gold mining provides a quarter of its national budget and around 10% of the total economic output. Despite this, Mali, which is reeling from a growing Islamist insurgency, remains one of the poorest countries in the world. So the military leaders now want a tighter grip on the country's natural resources. Last year, Mali adopted a new mining code, which allows the state to take a stake of up to 30% in new ventures. The reform also abolished tax exemptions granted to companies during the mining process. In line with these reforms, Mali announced a series of decrees this week, increasing the state's stake in the various gold and lithium mining ventures. For example, Mali will take a 30% stake in the British Bougouni and the Chinese Golamina lithium mines in the country's south. Mali will also increase its stake up to 30% in 2 Canadian gold mines in the country's west and south. Increasing stake is not the only way that Mali is asserting its control. As per reports, Mali is seeking approximately $500 million in unpaid taxes from Barrick Gold, the firm whose CEO it once arrested. In fact, the detention of the foreign officials is becoming a pattern in Mali. Last month, Mali arrested the CEO and 2 employees of the Australian firm Resolute Mining. The firm has now agreed to pay $160 million in fines to free its employees. This crackdown on foreign firms in West Africa coincides with the junta's strategic pivot toward Russia and away from the former colonial rule of France and other traditional Western allies. Earlier this year, Mali's military government officially entered into an agreement with Russia for gold refinery project in Bamako. The deal, which spans 4 years, includes the construction of a refinery capable of processing a substantial 200 tons of gold annually. So the military leaders in West Africa are going ahead with their strategy of forging new alliances. How will the West react to all of these setbacks? For more on this, we have with us Patrick Bond, Distinguished Professor at the University of Johannesburg, who is joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Good to be back with you, Alison.
Now, what are the key issues underlying the dispute between Mali's military government and Barrick Gold? And how does this reflect the broader tensions with the foreign mining firms that are operating in the country?
Yes, it's a problem not just in Mali. Of course, sovereignty and control over a non-renewable resource, one that is depleting, so it's wasting. And unless you capture the revenues and you reinvest, and you do that sensibly, as a government, well, as we see where I am speaking from, Johannesburg, where we had half the world's historic gold at one point, the result, if you don't do that, if you don't reinvest, is a city, a country that falls apart. Right now, our water system, from where I'm talking about, doesn't even work at night. And those are the sorts of dilemmas that anyone, not just in Mali, but across the continent, has to face. And this is quite an extreme step to say that Mark Bristow himself from South Africa, who made his wealth and put together Rand Gold here in Johannesburg, now he's facing arrest. And in some ways, this sort of threat, Barrick knows it well from having also suffered the same in Tanzania under the then President John Magufuli in the late 2010s. Well, they may have to pay up because there's a fairly good chance that, like most mining companies, they take out far more than they should, and they don't reinvest in the society's welfare.
Right, and Professor, since the 2020 coup, Mali's military rulers have emphasized a fairer distribution of mining revenue. What concrete steps have been taken to achieve this? And how do these policies compare to other resource-rich African nations?
Well, some of the policies are really avant-garde. They're at the cutting edge, such as saying, we're going to keep our gold here, not just ship out the ore. We want to smelt it here. And that's why the Russian smelter may be an important advance. It's a big challenge for smelters, as we've seen in South Africa, where we ran out of electricity because of so much smelting. Do you have enough power to do that, especially in Bamako? And those questions about, let me call it a resource nationalism. Can you take the natural resources that the current and also, don't forget, future generations really will rely upon, and ensure that you're getting fair value? The African mining vision has been the main route to being able to do that, but it's come under a lot of criticism. First, that it hasn't worked. Second, that it still relies on foreign mining capital, and that's the big dilemma. If you want to take your resources out of the ground today, you may need the very big machines, the technology, the markets, the know-how that for example, a Canadian company, Barrick, has. However,
well, guess what, buddy? They have to pay up. They have to pay up for that machinery with all the looting they've been doing. So I don't see that as a problem, you see? And I'm going to end it here. You can watch the rest of the video and what's in the chat. This is just, a lot of, I would just say exposition to say that they're afraid of what's going on in the Sahel as the people and their leaders are continuing to gain their independence and their sovereignty and getting the control of their minerals and their resources. And we here at Quest Unite Africa, this is why we created such an organization to help our brothers and sisters through strategic partnerships to help them with our four main pillar strategy. That would be medical, business, cultural engagement, and technical innovation. We seek to help them in their pursuit of those goals and to promote beneficial initiatives for the African diaspora and the continent as a whole. That's all I have today, family. Enjoy the rest of your day and your Shabbat, and shalom.